Okay, well, I will first say uh, there weren't enough hacking devices here. I have my flipper, use my slide advancer, so just so everybody's aware. If you see your badge doing weird stuff, it's not me. Okay, so my talk today is how to make insecure code hard to write. This is the IDE Guardrails playbook. I had some major worries about how AI was affecting the development pipeline for CI/CD and then how we address vulnerabilities. So I created this strategy for my company, and I'm actually still working on getting it fully implemented. So here's what I've learned so far. Starting off with me, my name is Joe Wilson. I'm the Director of Information Security and Compliance, a company called BI Incorporated. Most likely you haven't heard of us unless you've been in trouble with the law. We do stuff like ankle monitors, breathalyzers, or I guess if you've been on the law enforcement side, maybe you would have heard of us there. I've been in cybersecurity for over 8 years now, which is crazy that I'm sneaking up on a decade. And then been in IT for over 20 years, and really longer than that. I've messed with computers since I was a little kid, and when I was that age, I definitely broke more than I fixed. We work with law enforcement nationwide, local, state, federal, and county governments. We work currently with the U.S. or I work currently with the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, and in the past, I've also worked with the U.S. Department of Commerce on the Census Bureau project. Oh yeah, before I move on here, one thing I did want to say is, I do have the certs that you would expect for somebody in my role. It feels like, yeah, I'm here to check the box. This was a pragmatic, realistic approach that I could take with my developers and not cause, uproar, too much friction, etc. Okay, so the risk and the path forward. This is what I want to talk about today. We're going to talk to look at why our current success. One of the things with code reuse creates kind of a monoculture in code. When it's actually introducing a monoculture risk. Then I kind of want to discuss the speed of risk, how AI is rapidly increasing the discovery of vulnerabilities and the exploitation of those vulnerabilities in our environment. I also want to talk about what the guardrails that I came up with for my environment and where I had success and where I've had friction. And lastly, did this create a dev mutiny, or did I create some security allies? So, I have a picture of bananas on here. You're probably asking, what the heck do bananas have to do with software security? I mentioned the monoculture. In the 1950s, we all ate the Gros Michel strain of bananas, and at some point, it's called Panama disease, took out every single one of the Gros Michels, and now we eat the Cavendish banana. And this monoculture that I'm talking about, it is created this specific type of vulnerability. One vulnerability now can take out everything all at once. I don't know if you realize this, but all the bananas that you've probably eaten in your entire life were clones of each other. So this is something that is relevant to what we're talking about today. And 90% of the world reuses the same libraries, and we've created the software monoculture within our software environments and our repositories. So we're creating these same software clones, and we're vulnerable to this, a single virus or a single vulnerability. The perfect example of this is Log4j. And we can't stop reusing code. No one should be out there writing an encryption algorithm from scratch. This is something that we should leave to the experts, people like RSA, those types of encryption methods, just to make sure that they're fully not reversible. The time and energy it takes is not worth the squeeze on that. But we do also have to realize that this efficiency of reusing code has stripped away the resilience that we have in the same way that the banana is vulnerable. The second thing I want to talk about is accelerating timelines. Attackers are accelerating, and we need new strategies to keep up. They are leveraging AI automated tools. You think like Evil AI. There's a lot of tools on the good side right now too. You think everybody's heard of Anthropic Mythos, which we'll talk about later. But there's some other really neat tools out there like Horizon 3 that do automated pen testing. If you haven't heard of those, I highly recommend you go check that out. And it's really only a matter of time until the level of sophistication of tools like Anthropic Mythos get out there into the hands of the bad guys too. So my plan was to really figure out a way to pull security even further to the left into the development process and bring it into the IDE, and give code and security suggestions to developers on the fly while they're developing coding. I'll be the first to admit that I'm not a developer, so this was a lot of trial and error here, talking to my developers, making sure that I'm not introducing too many frictions and interrupting flow. So, I've talked a little bit about the why. I want to go a little bit deeper. Code reuse. We can ship code faster. But at the same time, we inherit all the technical debt of those existing libraries, and all the vulnerabilities present in those libraries. And there's a myth around the trusted sources. Just because a patch or a library or whatever is popular does not necessarily mean that that code is up to snuff and secure for your particular implementation. My experience in highly regulated environments is, we have to develop most of our code from scratch for this exact reason. I can't go just pull down a repository and say, look, this code is good, and let's ship it. And then AI compliance is the AI complication, excuse me, is another thing. Models hallucinate. Prompts aren't perfect. The results that you get out of an AI response are not necessarily what you're looking for. And I was at a talk earlier just two ago that talked about the rate of hallucinations. Didn't realize as high as it is. And in some cases you're seeing 10, 20, 30% rate of hallucination. The keystroke gap is another big one. So now we're getting into the speed of risk. Models can, like Cursor, Sonnet, and Codex, they can generate code faster than any human can review that code. So we have to come up with solutions to that are able to put guardrails around that code and review that code in real time as quickly as it's generated by an AI model. So there's a catch-22 of, I guess we're reviewing AI code with an AI. So it's an unfortunate reality. Automated exploitation. I mentioned Evil AI. It's a tool that you can go out and pay. I think it's like $100 worth of Bitcoin, and it's an AI generated tool that can go scan code and look for vulnerabilities. And then zero buffer. The time to attack is getting smaller, and this is a reality that we've been experiencing for years and decades now. I mean, I can remember a time where we were like, oh yeah, by the time somebody gets into our network and runs an exploit, we have days, weeks, or maybe even months before that happens. And now we're getting to the point where it's less than seconds from the time a vulnerability is discovered to the time it's exploited and somebody has access to your environment and your data. Over on the far right there, I talked about shifting left. So prevention is absolutely greater than remediation, something that seems obvious. A bug caught in the IDE is going to cost you cents versus something that code that's already made it to production and is running. The amount of effort that goes into replacing that code, figuring out what was wrong, putting a fix in place can cost you thousands of dollars. If not, you're already compromised. Brand damage happens, brand reputation damage happens. We could get into big discussion about how reputation is damaged or not. It seems like a lot of these organizations, they go through these instances of reputational damage, and then a week later it's like, oh, that's old news, nobody cares anymore. But anyway, that's another discussion. Developer flow. This is one of my biggest fears. Could we actually put these tools in place in front of a developer, give them code suggestions on the fly, give them security suggestions on the fly without causing too much friction where they're going to go around the tool? And then the last part of it was the win-win. I really wanted to reduce the security tax on developers while lowering the risk ceiling for the entire organization. Because it's so relevant right now, I did want to talk about Anthropic Mythos and the Project Glasswing. We've all heard the noise around it. I've spoken with colleagues that do have access to Mythos, and they are as equally impressed as all the rumors that you probably heard. I just wanted to give a couple of examples. Mythos found a 27-year-old vulnerability in OpenBSD, which is supposed to be the secure flavor of Linux. That's been sitting out there for 27 years. So who knows if nation states have had that and been exploiting it this entire time. And it's just scary things. And the way that it is able to chain together vulnerabilities to achieve its goals is something that's novel, that we have not seen in the past. The last example that I wanted to talk about is now I'm drawing a blank on that one, but oh yeah, so there was a researcher, a research group that said, I've isolated the system, and talked to Mythos, gave it a goal of escaping this isolation. Well, and then he went to lunch. By the time he finished his lunch, he had an email from the agent that ran under Mythos that said, I've escaped, and it published on social media. Hey, look, I escaped this isolated environment that the researchers put me inside of. It's just incredible the amount of capabilities that it has, and it's decreasing the amount of time between when vulnerabilities are exploited. So here's where I started putting some ideas in place. So this is the part one of my guardrail stack. Since the speed of risk is accelerating exponentially, our feedback loops, they really have to change from weeks to nearly instant. So that's why I needed feedback in the IDE before we publish any code in the CI/CD pipeline, or before it goes to production. I wanted a solution that provided that instant impact and felt more like spell check than anything else. Something that could help them identify the libraries that they're in use and where those vulnerabilities are was the next piece that I wanted, but we'll talk about that more later. There's a lot going on in this screenshot. This is actually SonarQube, the tool that we chose. I already had it in my environment, so getting buy-in and trust from my developers was a lower bar to meet. But really from here this is my speed of risk solution. I chose to go with it because, like I mentioned, we were already paying for it. We just weren't using this particular feature. Point one down there in the lower right, you're going to see is where it states that there's a SQL injection. It points out where it is in the code, where the user's input can travel from the web request directly into the database query without being sanitized. In section 2, you're going to you see that this isn't just a squiggly line. It's not just saying, like, look, here's an error. It's saying, here's the specific issue. It spells out what the issue is and really mentors the developer on why this is an issue. In section 3, you're going to see the code is highlighted and shown to the dev, and where it all links together. And then the fourth part is a detailed explanation of where the problem is, and it clearly presents it to the developer. And then in section 5, there is a "How can I fix this?" button. It actually presents the solution to the user. Hey, this is how you sanitize the solution or sanitize the query before it goes to the database. This solution really acts as a mentor to junior devs and is a high-speed sanity check for senior developers. As I mentioned, I'm not a coder, so I really was relying on feedback from my dev team, and that was essential in getting buy-in and making sure that this wasn't something that I was just going to put in place and they were going to figure out a way around. And one of the other struggles I ran into as a director and a security engineer, I've almost always exclusively been on the blue team, is that my natural instincts were turn it all on. Let's look at every single vulnerability that exists in our environment. And I really had to take a step back from that, because that's just not reality and how things work. When you take a strategy like that, it really does backfire. All of a sudden, your developers are seeing 3,000 vulnerabilities, and they look at that and go, no, thank you. I'm going to do it my old way. So just turning on the criticals and maybe some of the highs that we realized were applicable or were going to be publicly accessible, applying it to certain repos. Maybe in the development repo, we have a lot looser guardrails, but by the time that these are promoted to higher to stage or pre-prod, we have more controls and more rules in place. But our strategy was really signal over noise. Alert fatigue does nobody any good, and we took the political risk of turn off most of these rules just so that we could make sure that there wasn't too much friction. Okay, now the second part of our security stack. This was more, on the second side. We're shifting left with a purpose. We wanted to move from security as kind of this final gate to more to an integrated developer experience where they're seeing the suggestions in real time. And we want to kind of have this paved road concept where creating automated, secure by default pathways that make the right way the easy way. Or I should say the right way the easy way. Infrastructure as code, guardrails, enforcing security standards at the PR and the pull request level before a single resource is provisioned. And we really wanted to automate remediation. We wanted to utilize BlueFlag to identify and neutralize drift or insecure configurations in real time. The first big piece of that was identity governance. This is one of the places I found the most value with BlueFlag. It doesn't just show, hey, here's all your developers. It shows, hey, here's a developer, here's their overprivileged score, here's how many repos they have access to. That person at the top happens to be my director of software, so they actually do need access to all this. That's why we removed the risk rating. But there are individuals in our organization that they have the same level of permissions that they shouldn't have. So we're really working hard with the development team. They have their own timeline, so we would kind of have to take a low and slow approach and not force it down their throats. But this is something that we've identified a lot of gaps. Automated lifecycle management is another big one. When people join a team or leave a team, their permissions change. So we need to make sure that we're providing them the minimum amount that they need of permissions that they need to do their job. And this is a tool that we can automate that process with. And then centralized visibility, I talked about this a little bit. Who has access to what is really key. Most of our developers are much less provisioned than the list that I have here, but I just wanted this slide for high impact. The next thing that is really looking at the assets that we have in our environment. We use static spreadsheets, like a lot of organizations do to try to keep track, and they just get old, outdated, and people get lazy and they don't update them. So this tool allows us to see all of our assets. They're out in the wild. If we have rogue developers or just shadow IT or just somebody that left a repo out there that has gotten forgotten, we're able to now identify that and address and remediate it. This particular one is a Terraform misconfiguration. So I can see that I don't just have 523 repos. I have this one particular Terraform. So it's a Terraform file with a critical or high misconfiguration, but it also says, look, I have it in 7 different repositories. Now I can make a ticket and say, look, to reduce your level of effort to go remediate this, here's every single repository that we found it in, and replicate the solution among those 7 different repositories. So it's really helped us with vulnerability mapping, linking our assets and inventory directly to our vulnerability scanners and ensuring coverage and visibility. And the last piece of it is compliance. We have a lot of compliance in our regulated environment. We have to follow FSMA, SOC 2, PCI. The alphabet soup goes on and on. Being able to open up this window and say, from a code development standpoint, here's where our gaps are. Here's where where we need to be. I can move away from kind of that fire drill of audit season and move into, hey, look, I have constant auditing always going on, always showing me where my vulnerabilities are, where my shortcomings are from a compliance standpoint. Evidence collection becomes automated. I'm not going and pulling a log and sifting through it manually and filtering it for the specific fields that are relevant to that particular audit. And it really takes it from theory to kind of attestation. Compliance isn't just saying, we have a policy. I can prove that it's technically enforced with the visibility that I have through BlueFlag. And one other benefit, kind of a side benefit, they don't have all of the frameworks in here yet, but I've already seen an improvement. We may be looking at ISO 27001 and HIPAA in the future, so that we'll be able to fully integrate this tool when those features become available, if I'm ever contractually obligated to comply with those frameworks. Okay, so here's a code or a quote that I try to use when I do projects like this. Security at the expense of usability comes at the expense of security. And if it's something that's not usable, developers aren't going to use it. They're just going to figure out how to go around it. I mean, we've all seen the shadow IT, that happens in our environments. This is a rule I try to live by when I'm putting something new in front of really anybody throughout the entire company. Okay, so now the results. Did I have dev mutiny or did I find a security ally? Well, the old way was really, if security shows up at the end to tell someone that they failed, we've really lost. I really want a tool and a solution to help them along the way and guide them, like a mentor. I don't want the solution to be like a professor grading your paper after you've already finished it. So now you have to go back and, there's nothing you can do about it. We just have to start over. It's just not the way that we should be doing things. So with this solution, I was able to actually build some allies in my software dev team. It was security is kind of a spell check at the IDE level. And, as long as it's not too intrusive, where, it doesn't interrupt a developer in their flow, we actually had a lot of success in really just giving them the tools to write code in a secure manner. That this strategy has not only returned time to my team, but it also improved the CI/CD pipeline and sprint schedules for my dev teams. Okay, I tend to talk really quickly. Looks like I have these slides out of order. Anyway, so we talked about the keystroke gap. First we have to acknowledge that there's a security buffer that's really gone. It doesn't exist anymore. The velocity of code, how quickly AI writes code, reviews code, is something that we have to really consider. We have to inspect code it's a monoculture now. Software reuse is necessary, but it is risky, so we just need to take that risk into account and ensure we aren't introducing the Cavendish into our code. I'm really looking at signals over noise. Don't put too many rules in front and alerts in front of your developers. They're just gonna, like I mentioned, they're just gonna go around it. A noisy tool is really a dead tool. And security is usability. This goes back to the quote: if the secure path is the easiest path, your team will take it every time. Okay, does anybody have any questions?
What's the name of this SonarQube fully integrated?
So it is SonarQube. It's SonarLint is the name of the tool. Joe?
Roughly, how big is your team? How many apps? Just trying to get an idea for the amount of time it took for you to get to this. And I got to follow up.
Yeah, it's a kind of an interesting question. We have our development team, including QAs, is approximately 50 people. We do a lot of different software development. We have a lot of legacy apps and a lot of technical debt that is being addressed. So to answer your question, that's hard. I mean, you saw we have 523 repos. Granted that it's across dev, stage, pre-prod, and prod. So there's some duplication there. It's probably, active repos in production is probably less than 50. I don't know, does that answer your question?
The other part was, did anybody step up to, or do you have a security champion program within the development?
Yeah, two of the managers on our security development team, or our software development team, have been instrumental in this, and they've kind of really, I wouldn't say voluntold their teams, but in a way that they did, said, hey, we're going to go this direction. I think it's going to be good for the team, and in the long run, because of their buy-in, has helped me quite a bit.
I promise this last one. About how long? Was this a 6-month effort?
It's
18-month effort?
This is still ongoing. I started this with SonarLint, last summer sometime, late last summer, maybe August or September. That part is still kind of hit or miss. I've been getting some good results out of it, and we definitely have had fewer vulnerabilities at the end when we do our SEA, but in our dynamic testing. But it's still an ongoing process, making sure that it's enforced. With BlueFlag, we've had that for probably 6 months now, because of production timelines and requirements from the marketing and sales teams. It's been slow going. So I've been working on that for about 6 months. So we've had a lot of success with it so far. It's really accelerated my ability to have not only visibility into the environment, but just reduce our risk as an organization overall.
You had mentioned in your signal over noise slide that your team had reduced the friction for the developer, so you reduced some of those signals. How did you reintroduce additional signals, right? Like at some point it becomes like a false narrative that, oh look, we really only have these many criticals. Is that something that you guys did, or was it you introduced all the criticals, all the highs?
So we we took an approach of saying let's just look at the criticals for now. But where we were doing before, we had no visibility into it until SCA and SAS and DAS scanning was even being done. So, it was a more of a challenge of, okay, now we have to go back and fix this, which causes more friction than, okay, if I can fix this while I'm in the process of coding. That was the big angle that we pushed to reduce friction. Mm-hmm. Yep.
These SaaS type tools are starting to leverage the AI integrations a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
You guys do that within the security tool set? Do your developers do that? People don't know from their IDE standpoint?
Yeah, we're in the process of deploying Cursor AI. So we are doing that in the development process as well, and this kind of is all tying together. We are trying to put AI on the back end too, but and have it kind of scan all along the way. Really, the biggest challenge that we ran into with this though was, just getting buy-in in the first place. It's kind of just like, oh well, security wants to do something else, but showing them that, hey, we can reduce our friction on the back end by not forcing you to go back to the drawing board and redo your entire code base to address this vulnerability was the biggest win that we had. Mm-hmm. Okay, anybody else? Oh yeah.
Yeah, for SonarQube, I've been using my open source all aspects of the project. I'm pretty competitive. I'm just curious how you ended up with that video resellers or what your alternative.
It was already there before I joined, so that was how we ended up with it. It's not my favorite tool. It's not perfect, and I don't think any tool is perfect. There's SonarQube is going to catch things that maybe Sneak or the other similar tools wouldn't catch, and vice versa. So it was just a tool of convenience in this particular instance for us. It happened to have this capability with showing developers code suggestions and security suggestions in the IDE. Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks everybody.